Electronic dance music is one of the most popular genres worldwide. Starting in the United States and Europe, it quickly rose globally to become one of the most successful movements on earth. However, there is one major exception to this rule: the United States. How did the country that helped start EDM become so not into it, especially in contrast to the other founder, Europe? That's what we're trying to solve today. Outside of breathing, eating, and killing, one thing humans really like to do is to dance. Dancing is a fundamental trait of human nature, and nearly all cultures around the world have some sort of dancing tradition. It is also a great thing to base a music genre off of, and the success of dance music around the world is proof of that. But out of all the genres of dance music out there, one genre has become the most dominant: EDM. Originating in the late 1970s, EDM initially started off as an electronic variant of disco, which quickly spun off into different genres and would gain an identity on its own. It would then become super popular in Europe and Latin America, eventually dominating many parts of the world with one major exception: America. For some reason, despite being one of the founding nations of EDM, the country could not bother to care for EDM, and so the genre never took off in America. But how did such a thing come about? To answer that, we'll have to cover many different topics, from history to culture. So without further ado, here we go. The history of EDM starts with disco. The fundamentals of modern dance music that EDM abides by started with disco, alongside having the earliest electronic tracks being disco tracks. Disco was started largely in the United States and Britain, similar to EDM. However, the trajectory of their scenes, and subsequently their EDM scenes, would go in totally different directions over the following decades. In America, for example, when disco became popular, there was really no movement to counter the impact of disco, unlike in the UK, where punk emerged as a counterbalance to its influence. Then in America, the market became saturated with disco, often of cheap and low quality, while no other genre was able to overtake its influence. This made people sick of disco quickly, and an anti-disco movement began to spring up against its influence. This movement also included people who did not like black music or how black music was becoming more mainstream. In America, music is often segregated by race, and racism was more prevalent at that time. So disco, which primarily played on black radio, was seen as a threat by some as an intrusion of black culture on white society. While this aspect did not characterize the anti-disco movement as a whole, it was still a prevalent factor and force in disco's fall from popularity. However, such a strong racial reaction did not happen in the UK, where music was not segregated at all. All music, whether it be occupied predominantly by one race or the other, played on the same radio stations, and any kind of music could become popular on the radio. British rock, for example, was heavily influenced by black soul and blues music from America. These two factors in America would lead to the downfall of disco, and its failure would end up turning dance music into a pariah in the eyes of many American record companies, putting the movement underground for it to be in obscurity. AIDS further pushed dance music underground due to its associations with homosexuality, and America being a more homophobic society. Meanwhile, due to other factors listed above, dance music would continue to thrive in the UK and Europe, with genres such as Italo disco, high energy, and eventually house becoming very popular. However, if this situation was the full story, there would be still a lot of plot holes left to solve. Another aspect to consider is how the music and general cultural scenes differ between Europe and the United States. For starters, clubs are generally easier for Europeans to access than Americans. Europe is already a highly urbanized society with much of the population living in or near highly populated areas, making it easy to access services that such provide, like clubs. America, on the other hand, are more spread out and hence do not have as good of access to such services without much time and commitment. Another point to bring out is the widespread adoption of public transportation in Europe, making it easy and cheaper to access clubs without having to deal with the extensive hassles and costs of using vehicle transportation, like in the United States. The music side should also be considered when it comes to this topic. In America, government funding for the arts is limited and the music industry is much more hierarchical, with only a handful of labels determining what songs get promotion and what don't. On top of that, the industry focuses on profits, which disincentivizes creativity and experimentation, only leaving the blandest and safest EDM tracks. This in turn only appeals to normal people who will then gravitate to whatever else is popular, while any grounding that the genre has does not exist. Hence, the genre becomes less popular. In contrast, it is the complete opposite in Europe. Independent labels often have nearly as much influence on the music scene and the charts as majors, and government support means that more experimentation can occur within the scene. This creates a thriving scene that can support actual fan base, not just normal people, and hence makes it more popular. So overall, it is not just the history of the genre that makes EDM's popularity different between the regions, it is also the cultural support that makes the difference as well. And in many ways, this shows not just how music can be changed by aspects found in a region, but how all cultural products can be changed by such. Personally, I think America can benefit more culturally by taking more out of Europe's handbook when it comes to its culture, especially since American culture these days seems so stagnant and boring, helping it lose soft power around the world. I think that if America wants to continue its reign as a global superpower, it will have to implement such European ideas, that maybe in the end the situation can work out for all.